Today's lesson is discussing a team assignment. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And today we're going to continue talking about discussing a team assignment. That discussion is taking place between Tony and Beth. They have teamed up to be teammates, and they're going to work on this project in school, and it's all about solar energy or renewable energy sources.
Right, so the general topic is renewable energy sources, which they both thought was very broad, so they had to narrow it down, and they decided to focus on the efficiency of solar power in private residences. After that, all they had to do was decide who did what. They had to divide the roles, divide the tasks, and Beth suggested that she conduct some interviews while Tony did some of the research at the library.
Right, and of course, if you're looking for information about your assignment, you're going to have lots and lots of sources and lots of information that you've got to sort through and organize, and that's kind of the topic for today's lesson. I guess Tony bit off more than he can chew. He's got too much information, and he needs some help sorting it out. So let's get to it. Let's listen now to part 3, Running into Some Trouble.
3. Running into some trouble. Tony calls Beth to discuss a problem with the project. Hey Beth, it's Tony. I've got some bad news. I guess I was too ambitious and gathered so much data that I won't have enough time to analyze and organize it all before our meeting tomorrow.
That's all right. These things happen and we can work through it together. Let's still meet up as planned and I can help out with the analysis and organization.
Thanks. I really appreciate your understanding and willingness to help.
No problem. As we look at the data, I think we can just narrow down the focus and prioritize the most important aspects.
Okay, great. Thanks for putting my mind at ease.
大家好，第一部分我们来介绍动词 analyze， 它的意思是分析。例如，The historian analyzes how the war influenced the artist's work. 该历史学家分析战争如何影响那位艺术家的作品。又或者说 The data must be analyzed before a conclusion can be made. 那些资料得经过分析才能做出结论。另外，补充这个字的名词 analysis A-N-A-L-Y-S-I-S analysis 它是指分析或分析报告或检验结果。例如 The business report includes an analysis of customer habits 这份商业报告包含了顾客习惯的分析。又或者说 Our next step will be to do an analysis of the data from the experiment 我们的下一步将是做这项实验的资料分析。接下来我们看到单字 aspect， 它是名词，指的是层面。例如 Talking to customers is an important aspect of a salesperson's job. 与顾客谈话是业务工作中很重要的一个层面。再举一个例子 Which aspects of the movie appeal to you the most? 这部电影的哪些层面最吸引你？
So the title of today's dialogue is Running into Some Trouble. And here we have Tony who calls Beth to discuss a problem with the project. So they've already begun the project. Tony has already started doing research. And he calls Beth and says, Hey Beth, it's Tony. I've got some bad news. I guess I was too ambitious and gathered so much data that I won't have enough time to analyze and organize it all before our meeting tomorrow. So Tony has a problem, which is that he's not good at managing time. He spent too much time gathering data, and now he doesn't have enough time to analyze all the information he had gathered. So he was too ambitious in gathering data. Ambitious, it refers to somebody who is very determined to be successful, to succeed at something. You can also use that word to mean that someone has done more than what they had to do, what they were expected to do. Or as Roger had mentioned in the beginning, somebody who has bitten off more than they could chew.
Exactly. So he was too ambitious and he gathered too much data. It's so much data that he won't have enough time to analyze and organize it all. If you analyze something, you look at it and you make some conclusions about it. You examine it methodically and you look at all the details and you try to figure out what it all means and you try to make some conclusions. So yes, he needs to analyze all of that information, all of that data, and then he needs to organize it all before their meeting tomorrow. In other words, he's got to list things that are important at the beginning and follow a whole format of presenting this information in a logical sequence. If you just throw out a bunch of information in no particular order, it's not going to be very organized. It's not going to be very convincing.
Yes, and Beth says, that's all right. These things happen, and we can work through it together. Let's still meet up as planned, and I can help out with the analysis and organization. So Beth is very good at consoling Tony. She tells him, don't worry, these things happen. It's happened before. A lot of people have done the same thing. We can take care of it together. So Beth suggests that they still meet up as planned. They had probably set up a time and a date to meet up to work on a project. So she says, let's still meet up at that time, and then I can help you with analyzing the data and organizing it.
Indeed, Tony is grateful. He says, thanks. I really appreciate your understanding and willingness to help. So he was probably worried that he gathered too much information and that Beth would be angry at him for not being very organized, and they probably would not be able to work together as a team very well. But she's very understanding. She's very sympathetic to all the information he has gathered. So he appreciates her understanding and also her willingness to be an outstanding member of this two-person team. And Beth says, no problem at all. And then she goes on to say, as we look at the data, as we look at the information, I think we can just narrow down the focus and prioritize the most important aspects. So again, they need to analyze all that information and they need to narrow down the focus. They need to be more specific about their focus, get rid of the information that is not important, keep the information that is important, and then they need to prioritize this information. They need to determine what is more important and what is less important.
Right. So again, narrow down means to reduce the number of possibilities or choices. Sometimes when we have too many choices, for instance, what kind of ice cream flavor do you want? If you go to a store that has 30 different flavors, you might have a hard time choosing. So you want to narrow down your choices to just 2 or 3 and then choose from those 2 or 3 choices. So they're going to narrow down the focus and they're going to prioritize the most important aspects. To prioritize means to treat one thing as being more important than the other thing. So they're going to choose one aspect of the research and prioritize it, which means they're going to treat that aspect as being more important than all of the other aspects. Now, an aspect is a particular part or feature of something. So I could say, for instance, I could ask my friend with whom I've gone to see a movie, which aspect of the movie did you like the most? Did you like the acting, the special effects, the dialogue? Aspects.
Right. So, of course, they need to prioritize these things. They need to find out what's more important and what's less important. And in their presentation, of course, they may choose the order in which they present their information, saving the best for last or having the best thing at the beginning. It's up to them, basically, how they organize their presentation. And Tony says, okay, great. Thanks for putting my mind at ease. Now, here to put someone's mind at ease just means to make them feel relaxed so they don't worry so much. I guess before this particular meeting, Tony was very, very nervous. He was very worried about having too much information, and he was probably afraid that Beth would be disappointed in him and she would be angry at him and then their project would not be very successful. And he was already worried about that. But Beth has been very understanding and she has put his mind at ease. She has made him relax. She has made him not worry so much. Okay, that brings us to the end of the conversation for today, the first conversation, conversation 3. Let's move on now to conversation 4, rehearsing for the presentation. Let's listen.
4. Rehearsing for the presentation. After finishing their report, Beth and Tony talk about rehearsing for their presentation.
Now that we've finalized the report, I think we'd better start rehearsing for the presentation.
I've got to admit, I'm a little nervous about presenting in front of the class.
Well, that's what a rehearsal is for, right? It'll give us a chance to practice the presentation and make any adjustments that seem necessary.
I guess you're right. I just feel a bit awkward when I'm under the spotlight.
I think almost everybody feels that way. But look, we've put a ton of good work into this project and written a really thorough report. So we've got this.
Thanks. That does give me a little more confidence.
第二部分，我们看到动词 rehearse， 这个字的意思是排练或排演，复数。例如 Drew and Veronica are rehearsing their lines for the school play. Drew 和 Veronica 正在排练学校话剧的台词。或是 The cast of the play rehearsed tirelessly in the week before opening night. 该剧的演员们在开幕之夜的前一周不知疲倦的排练。另外，补充这个字的名词 rehearsal, R-E-H-E-A-R-S-A-L, rehearsal, 它有排练、排演的意思。例如 We only have time for one full rehearsal before the performance. 我们在演出前只有时间进行一次完整的排练。再举一个例子 There are only few rehearsals left before the opening ceremony. 在开幕典礼前只剩几次预演。最后，我们看到形容词 thorough 指的是仔细的或严谨的、彻底的或全面的。例如 The police did a thorough investigation of the crime scene, but still found nothing. 警察对犯罪现场进行仔细的调查，但仍然一无所获。或是 The doctor gave his patient a thorough examination. 该医生对他的病人进行了彻底的检查。
So the title of this dialogue is Rehearsing for the Presentation. So Tony and Beth have already started preparing for the presentation. They've done their research, they've conducted the interviews, and they're trying to put the information together. Now they have to rehearse for the presentation, which means they're going to go through the presentation, pretend as if they're making the presentation to the class, to their professor, and practicing it so that they won't make any mistakes, or they'll try not to make any mistakes when the day of the presentation actually comes.
Right, so they have to get up in front of the class and make a presentation. It's not just about writing a report and handing it in. They actually have to have a presentation in front of the class with visual aids and graphs and charts and things like that. So after finishing their report, Beth and Tony talk about rehearsing or practicing for their presentation. Remember, to rehearse just means to practice something. Usually it's something that is presented in front of an audience. Like, for example, when I was in high school, I did a tuba solo one time as part of the competitions, but I did not rehearse enough and I missed a couple of passages and I only got a 2. I should have gotten a 1 if I had practiced or rehearsed ahead of time, but that can happen, of course. And of course, here they're going to rehearse before the presentation so they don't screw it up when the time comes.
Yes, and of course, a presentation is a formal talk in which you describe or explain something, such as research or an investigation that you've done to a group of people. So a lot of managers and workers give business presentations in a company, but also students can give presentations in class. So Beth says, now that we've finalized the report, I think we'd better start rehearsing for the presentation. So to finalize means to make all of the final arrangements and the final decisions concerning something. So Beth and Tony must have spent a lot of time talking about how they wanted to organize the information and how they wanted to structure the report. And now that they've done all of this, they have finalized the report, they want to start rehearsing for the presentation.
So they've finalized the report, it's all ready to go, but now they just need to rehearse. And Tony says, I've got to admit I'm a little nervous about presenting in front of the class. That is normal, of course, when you give a presentation in front of a bunch of other people. You're going to be nervous no matter how confident you are.
Right. And Beth says, well, that's what a rehearsal is for, right? It'll give us a chance to practice the presentation and make any adjustments that seem necessary. So Beth's response is, well, rehearsals are there in order for us to make any changes that we think are necessary. So adjustments are changes, often small changes in something that makes that thing better or more accurate. So they want their presentation to be accurate. They want to tell the truth and not give any false information. And they also want their presentation to be effective, which means they want it to be interesting. They want to involve the audience or their classmates. So they're rehearsing in order to make the presentation as perfect as possible.
Right, so maybe Tony will get up and present his information to Beth, and she'll take notes and decide, well, you probably talked too much on that particular aspect, and you didn't talk enough about that particular aspect. So that's making adjustments, making some little changes so that they will be ready for the day of their presentation. And Tony says, I guess you're right. I just feel a bit awkward when I'm under the spotlight. If you feel awkward, you just don't really know what to do with yourself. For example, if you're a guy and you're trying to ask a girl to dance with you at the school dance, you're going to feel a little awkward because it's not something you do every day and you're not used to it. You're going to feel a little uncertain, basically. And here he says, well, I do feel a bit awkward, a little strange when I'm under the spotlight. And if you're under the spotlight, that means that bright light is shining on you and all the attention is focused on you.
Right. Quite literally, a spotlight is a light that shines above a stage. So actors, performers, dancers, singers, when they're performing, they're often under or in the spotlight, which means the light is shining on them. But you could also use the phrase figuratively when you want to mean that all of the attention is on you. So if you're giving a presentation, even though there may not be a spotlight per se, if everybody is looking at you and listening to you, then you're under the spotlight or you're in the spotlight. And a lot of people may feel awkward because of that, because they're not used to having all of the attention on them and they don't like to be the center of attention.
But Beth is very helpful here. She says, I think almost everybody feels that way. Again, it's not something you do every day. You don't always give a presentation in front of a bunch of people. So indeed, you're going to feel nervous. You're going to feel awkward when you're in the spotlight or when you're under the spotlight. And she says, but listen, we've put a ton of good work into this project and written a really thorough report. So we've got this. In other words, we're going to be successful. Don't be so nervous about this. It's natural to feel awkward and to feel nervous, but you need to be confident because, hey, we worked really hard on this project and we have written a really thorough report. If something's thorough, it is complete. You haven't ignored any aspects. You've pretty much paid attention to all the things that you need to pay attention to. You have really focused on all the details.
And then Tony replies, thanks. That does give me a little more confidence.
Right. So remember at the end of Beth's segment here, she said, we've got this. She stressed the word got. We've got this just means we have this under control. We've done our work. We should be confident about this. We've got this. We're ready to go. Don't worry so much because we do have a very thorough report. And again, Tony is very thankful. That does give me a little more confidence. Confidence is the noun form of being confident or to be confident. To be confident just means to believe in yourself, to be sure of yourself. And yes, even though people will feel awkward and they'll be nervous during a presentation, you don't want to look that way. You want to look like you know what you're doing. You want to look like you are confident or that you have confidence, and that way you'll get a better grade on your assignment or on your presentation.
That's right. And knowing how to work as part of a team is indeed important. As Tony and Beth have shown, they are good teammates because they are helpful to one another, even though they had divided the work. Tony was going to do the research and Beth was going to do the interviews. Beth did not hesitate to step in and help Tony with the research, with putting together the research when he needed help. And that's what a good teammate is all about. And these days, it's important to know how to work as part of a team because we have that kind of work situation more and more, not just in school, but also in companies and in your working life. So I think that's why a lot of teachers today ask students to work in teams because they're preparing students to cooperate for the future.
Yep, we all have to be team workers in today's society, and we should get used to cooperating with others. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分对话是关于 running into some trouble。 那我们就来整理一下 run into 的用法。第一个我们可以用 run into somebody or something 去表达说撞到某人或某事物。举例来说 She lost control of her bike and ran into a tree。 她骑脚踏车失控撞到一棵树了。第二个我们可以用 run into somebody 来表达碰巧遇到某人，像是 I ran into Ken's sister yesterday。 我昨天碰巧遇到 Ken 的妹妹。那么第三个呢，我们可以用 run into something 来表达遭遇、遇到，可能是遇到某个困难啊、问题或是危险等等。像 Frank ran into some problems at work。 Frank 在工作上遭遇了一些问题。好，那么在课文第二部分的对话里面 Beth 有提到 Now that we've finalized the report, I think we'd better start rehearsing for the presentation. 既然我们的报告已经最后确定，我想我们最好开始排练报告。那这边有两个重点，第一个重点是 now that 表示既然由于，那它是用来引导原因的从属连接词，也就是说啊 now that 后面是要接表示原因的子句，这个子句通常是对方已经知道的原因或是讯息，而 that 可以省略。举例来说 Now that you've graduated, it's time to start looking for a job. 既然你已经毕业了，该开始找工作咯。好，那么第二个重点是要介绍句子里面它用到 we'd better 来表达我们最好怎么样怎么样，那它是来自 we had better 的缩写。当我们用 had better 来接原形动词，是表达最好怎么样怎么样，用来表示建议啊、规劝。虽然这个用语当中它有用到过去式助动词 had， 不过 had better 是用来建议现在或未来该怎么做。那么 had 可以跟人称主格代名词缩写成撇 d， 像是 I'd better、you'd better 等等。好，那举例来说 You'd better tell her the truth， 就是你最好跟她说实话。好，补充一下在口语当中 had 有时候会被省略不用，像大家都熟悉的一首圣诞歌曲，它的开头就是 You better watch out, you better not cry。 这个不同歌词版本可能会有一些变化，那主要就是在说 You better watch out， 你最好小心注意了， You better not cry， 你最好别哭，然后后面就唱说圣诞老公公要来，他会知道谁乖谁不乖哦。好啦，那么以上是今天重点整理，接着我们回顾今天单字吧。
Ambitious. Norma is driven to achieve her ambitious career goals. Analyze. The students analyzed the poem and provided their opinions about its meaning. Aspect. We need to consider every aspect of the problem to find a suitable solution. Presentation. Fred's exciting presentation really captured the audience's attention. Adjustment. It took her some time to make adjustments to the new city. Thorough. Only a thorough examination of every clue will enable the police to solve the case.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.